see if the power, it overheated, so. we're gonna
Yeah, see,
try
I
to get
thought
it.
Oh,
it
wouldn't be
smelled a little
surprised.
funny.
I was pretty careful with one machine today, to be honest with you. In my classroom, it was,
Yeah, the dryer's thing out of that house today, the heater element. I didn't plan to be home today, but I went home after, the room and stuff. That was a little upsetting.
ready to get out at noon. They had to close the school today and get ready at noon. Next 3 days they're doing it, but they've already decided, but tomorrow and Thursday too.
All right.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me.
This is related to, basically, agenda item number 5, authorization to proceed with solicitation of federal funding for a new pumping station for discussion and consideration. Again, I'll have Dan put, add in here as we go along. Background of the pumping station, it was built in 1964. It was rehabbed in 1985. Per Duff and Phelps Report Services, that's who we use for our depreciation. The pumping station has a 50-year depreciative lifespan. Its current lifespan now is 54 years. Just a few minor background things that I have, were mentioned at previous meetings. In January of 2018, the board was advised that pump number 2 was not operational due to an inoperable valve. As you can see here, the condition of the valve, it had completely deteriorated. Is that correct, Dan?
Actually, that's just what built up on the wet well side. The valve itself is on the other side. It's a
Oh, that's
plug
not the valve,
valve,
okay.
as Mr. Sweeney would know. And it's supposed to open quarter turn and be 100% open. Well, we had a 4-foot pipe wrench on it, a 8-ton come along, an 8-foot pipe, cheater bar. We could not get it to move. So that thing was fighting me for 15 years. Finally replaced it after it broke. We could always get it to operate. Well, it broke. That pump was down for quite a while through all that rain, because you have to wait for the perfect scenario so you can pump your wet well down. And you have to be able to slap this small valve in there before the water comes back up again. So
Dan, what's the function of a wet well? I do not know.
You want me
Is that just a
Get to
draw
the
site
pictures.
or?
to get to the pictures and Dan can, and you,
yeah, we'll explain that through the
Okay,
pictures.
great, okay.
this is self-explanatory. We've talked about it already. Some of the incidents that happened in February 2018 and as April of 2018. Some of the pictures of the current pump station. If you want to tell them what they're looking at, Dan.
Okay, this is the main building, okay, right here. And what you're looking at, where the, on the left-hand side of the left-hand picture is a stairwell down to the intermediate level and the wet well level. Okay, that's on this side. The gray door that you can see is the dry well. Okay, it's separated by 2 sides, a big concrete wall. The pumps are in the dry well. And the wastewater comes into the wet well, which is pretty much a big pit that just gives you capacity until your pumps can pump it out.
Understood, okay.
These are your pumps, your motor control center, the variable frequency drives for these pumps. We changed our control schematics on it a little bit in 2006, I believe it was. We were doing some force main work, and we put VFDs, variable frequency drives, which run a lot cheaper than the on-off 100 horsepower, bang, 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 bang. They continuously run, and they will ramp up or down according to the wet well level. Okay, if I say, hey, I got a lot of water coming in here, I'm going to ramp up, pump a little more water. These things regularly pump 3,300 gallons a minute when it's raining hard. My sewer plant capacity is 700 gallons a minute. So all that excess water I have to divert. Thank God we kept the lagoons, so I have an equalization ponds that I can hold them for a couple days. But while I bypass all that, I have to pump all that back through the plant. So think of 4 million gallons a day in a 750,000 gallon a day plant. Now this is the dry well, okay? There's a pump. That's actually pump number 1. That was nice and blue 2 or 3 days before that because we just replaced the valve. Well, that thing flooded. The pump is way down there on the left in that picture, and it was up to the door. Yeah, right there.
Well,
That's actually the air vent. Those things regularly get flooded. There's an air compressor with 2 motors in there. The Muffin Monster control motor is in there. The seal water, which is in the background of the picture on the left, they have pumps and motors right on the floor of this level. It's supposed to be a dry well. Okay.
Understood.
You can see the new door in the last picture. We're working on replacing the door and the seals and everything to try to get it back. Can you go back one?
one more, yep, that one,
Nope, next one.
one more.
2. Now, if you look at this door, the gray door, about the middle hinge, it regularly comes up to that because the wet well comes right out into this intermediate level because there's a floor drain right there. That's the purpose of holding it a little more so it drains back into the wet well so it doesn't come back out. But I've seen it all the way up to the top step. We actually have a float down there at the bottom. When we have really high flows, we keep moving the float up the steps to see if we're keeping up with it or not.
Gotcha.
So to know when we can go to sleep for that night.
This one?
That's pump number 2. That's the one that was down. If you can see in the far corner, we had to hoist that big valve out of there and put that new valve in there. There's really no, they put the forethought to put a crane right in the middle, but you still have to do a lot of rigging to get a big valve like that in a little hole like that. Standing on your head in the, you know what, taking bolts this big out that have been in there for 35 years.
A little stressful.
There's the wet well.
Wow.
This is every time it rains hard. We go in, we spray it out. This is what we get the next time it rains hard. Yeah, I can't keep the lights working in there because they flood all the time. What you're showing, what the picture in the foreground there is the old bar screen. We used to have to carry buckets right about where I'm standing, 5-gallon buckets out when I first started, because it would collect it all and put it in there and carry it up the steps, put it in the, because it was supposed to go out that little pipe above my head into a dumpster. It never did. That thing, I turned that off when we got the Muffin Monster. So it grinds it up
Okay,
so it can be pumped.
sure.
Now over at the new sewer plant, we have a bar screen, and it takes a lot of it out except for when we're at real high flows.
So we're looking to replace basically all the infrastructure over there. Is that a fair assessment? Like pumps, monitoring,
Well,
grinder?
we're gonna get to that. We have already reached out to several engineers, with mixed recommendations. Some recommend new, some recommend rehab. Rehab potentially is gonna cost you more than new, typically costs you more than new, based on having to just, and Dan can explain it more, based off the review, the engineering reports that we got, your actual rehab actually came in higher than a new, but we had mixed recommendations. Here's this picture, Dan. Do you need this one?
I'm
Do you
sorry?
need this picture? Are you good?
Yeah, well, that's the Muffin Monster in there. On the right, you can see the hoses going down to it. That's a hydraulic pump on it. It's only as good if the water level stays at the cutters, which you can just barely see the top of it down in there, and the cutters are about that big. And it regularly goes up to the old heater there. Fun, fun, fun.
So this chart is basically looking at the amount of rainfall and how the rainfall affects, sometimes affects the total flow. And the chart goes from July 15 to July of 2018. If you want to explain it a little bit, Dan.
We went back 3 years. So what you're seeing here is the total flow in million gallons is the blue line. That's for the month, okay? And the rainfall is for the month on the bottom line. So you can pretty much see every time that rainfall increases, the flow increases.
And as Dan explains it to me, that you might have a high rain day today, but he sees the effects at the pumping station of high flows for days, even a week or so, 2 weeks later. It's not just you get an hour worth of a heavy rainstorm, we get a high flow and then it goes. That pumping station continues to pump sometimes for weeks to get the flow.
Yeah, I have actually just caught up from July out at the sewer plant. Now, we actually turned our transfer pump down since those big rains in July. And I'm getting down to the level so I can hold for the next event, so I don't dump it out. But the problem is, when we get the overflows, it's not at the wastewater plant. It's from the pump station into town. Because the pumps cannot pump any more than 3,300 gallons a minute, and there's more coming in.
So can I ask a question? A new or refurbished pumping station would be able to handle more capacity?
No, that's not the answer. No, because you're designed around the pump station at the wastewater plant. So you can't just put the big pumps to keep it from coming out of manhole 98.
Right.
Then you're gonna overload your new wastewater plant that's supposed to last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And you're gonna wear everything out of 10.
So what's the answer?
Excuse me?
What's the answer if that was?
The answer is the first presentation with the relining and the
Oh, I see.
10-year.
Right, so, right, it's a combination, and that's what I
Both.
mentioned at the beginning. Neither one of these projects is the answer. It's a combination of fixing your sewer lines so that the flow in the pumping station
Pieces.
can keep up with it. So it's not these constant high flows. A new or rehab pumping station, because the current pumping station, as you saw the condition of it, it's 54 years old. All these high flows has taken its toll on all the equipment in there. Right now, just looking at the bare necessities of what is needed in that pump today is estimated about $108,000, and that's just scratching the surface of things that we know about. So it's a combination of what needs to be done. Dan, if you look at the current flow versus optimum flow chart, do you need this?
We're trying to get grants to cover.
Well, I think you've persuaded us. I mean, I think to a person,
All right, well, let me skip over these then. I'll take these.
Can we just go back real quick to that last one?
We worked hard on this, so just kind of.
okay, all right, understood. Just,
I just want to show you
it worked.
what our average daily flow is in tan. Okay, that's for the month. And this is my high daily flows from the pump station. You can
Yeah.
see that.
So like here.
I regularly get 3.5 million gallons that I have to deal with in one day.
Right.
It's like, we usually win. One of these days, we're not going to.
Understood, yeah, right.
In the last 3 years, you haven't been below it normal at all.
No.
No. Uh-oh. I'll move on. So basically, when you look at the impact of when your pumping station fails, you get the overflow into the streams and the creeks. You get severe sewer backups because there's no bypass. Manhole backups into people's homes. If it gets serious enough, you need tankers. Pumps would be needed to manually haul the wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant. A lot of this time is the staff's getting alarms because of overflows, over high flows, and it's causing some overtime for that as well. I talked about the MDE enforcement on sanitary sewer overflows earlier. This is some of the things that MDE does. They can fine up to $1,000 or up to from $1,000 to $32,500 per day for sanitary overflows. Recent fines, you see we got 4,000 2010, 4,000 2011, 5,600 in 2012. We do anticipate receiving a fine. Usually takes about 4 to 6 months to come through from these most recent overflows. If the pumping station would fail, and that's where the overflow comes from, the MDE would fine us the maximum amount, because what they would see is exactly what I believe Commissioner Rentz said, is they would see that as the town is not taking care of our issues. We're not fixing things, we're not maintaining our system, and if our pumping station fails that causes these overflows, they can fine up to the maximum amount, and they can also give you what's called a consent order, which would require the town to repair within a set designated amount of time. Right now, the project cost funding, the total estimated cost would be about $2.5 to $3 million between your engineering costs and your construction costs. Looking at,
To clarify, project is including the lining of more
No.
pipes or just the pumping station?
this is just the pumping
Okay,
station.
thank you.
Your possible funding sources, obviously, we're looking at grants, loans. We have no intention, we've talked about this with the mayor, we have no intentions of looking at private loans, based off of his experience with Mr. Haller and working with USDA. He pointed us back in the direction of USDA with Kendra Harmon. So Ms. Shaw and I have had I had a conference call with her, and basically the USDA process is that the board basically has to approve that staff pursues funding. You have to give us the permission to continue to pursue this option. If we receive the approval, then we have to advertise in the paper the notice of intent to apply. It has to be published in the newspaper. And then we can put out an RFP for a pump station engineer. USDA has a grant for the preliminary engineering report as well as an environmental study. Both of those have to be done to submit an application to USDA for funding. Conversations with Kendra, based on the seriousness of our situation, some of the MDE violations, we could potentially receive more grant than loan funding. We would probably go through USDA and MDE again. Same process that we went through with the wastewater treatment plant. These are the documents that we would have to submit to USDA. And then this quote from the EPA kind of hits it home on why we need to take care of our systems. Sewer and treatment facilities are designed around expected averages and maximum flows, but the I&I robs the system of its valuable capacities and puts a burden on the operation and maintenance. And it reduces the life expectancy of your treatment facility as well as your pumping station. Sewer charging backups and flows all require emergency response and contribute to the disruption of operations. And it says the same thing that we want to do. We want to develop a plan so that we can defer unnecessary costs for the future. You have a questions for myself or Dan?
I have a question. I must hate to ask it, but I'm going to. The MDE mandated that we build the new wastewater treatment plant, correct?
Correct, yes.
The MDE fines us if we have overflows of wastewater.
Correct.
Am I thinking too much like Pollyanna here? Can't the MDE help us out with this project?
Well, we will. Your initial step is, if you go, what we're doing is we're looking for funding right now from USDA. They have a grant up to $30,000
Well-
for the preliminary engineering report and the environmental study. Once you do that, then you could submit to USDA, and they will partner with probably MDE
Okay.
for the grant and funding. Through the wastewater treatment plant, we got all grants from MDE. We got a grant and a loan from USDA to pay for those projects.
Yes.
So what it ends up is being a combination. It just depends how much each agency wants to give.
Okay.
So yes, we
That
will
would
be reaching out to
fantastic,
MDE.
You know. Okay.
One of the questions I had was why didn't they address this in the first installation of all this? The mandate, we put it in.
Yeah.
My question was, why didn't they address this? When they designed this from 2000 to 2010, 2007, 2010, why do we have this problem right now? We have another $2.3 million. And we're going to bring it there. We had designers, we paid designers for this. And, we have wonderful people who worked there, but that was a state-of-the-art installation. And I don't think anybody really understood every nut and bolt of that thing. And it's just that this wasn't done before, and we're here, and just built into it is incredible. I think we have. I like to check with some recourse to our designer. I mean, if this thing blew up within 2 years, well, because we have a lot of rain,
There's an issue.
yeah. I mean,
Can't do more than.
we paid lots of money for the design on this thing, and we have to pay a lot of money for people overlooking the shoulder of these people
Right.
to do this.
I'll give you an example. You imagine, you see what our inflow is for I&I. Could you imagine what Washington D.C. and all them's are, and Baltimore City?
Right.
Because they're older.
Ellicott.
Right, yeah,
Ellicott City, well, I've seen Ellicott City, it's a mess,
right.
still. But ours just a little small town. You know, the other towns and stuff are bigger than we are. They're having the same problems, believe me, they are.
Right, right.
Because the infrastructure has to be replaced first, which we're trying to do with the 10-year period. You have to replace all your pipes. Get all your pipes replaced first, which our outer new developments are all new pipes, so
Right.
that helps out some. We're only gonna replace the main inside town. But it will cut all, at least half the water, if not 3/4 of it down. It should. Within that, if we get it all replaced like you want it to be replaced from the pumping station back.
It will slowly lower it, and
And you'll see a dramatic decrease in the water, inflow of water going into the thing. But it's just this, our system is so old, it's just the infrastructure has to be replaced, and the past administrations haven't done that. I mean, we have been doing it since I've been here, but in the 50s, they didn't worry about doing it that. In 60s and 70s, they didn't worry about fixing the infrastructure that. But
So 2 questions. Is a 10-year plan a realistic timeline to have this completed
For the
for the pipe relining?
pipe relining, we need to sit down and realistically look at all
Okay.
the sewer pipes and the feet that we're looking at. I can give you a better answer in another meeting.
Sure, that's fair.
Now that we kind of have a little bit of, we have the support of the board and the mayor, we can certainly really come up with a good plan. If the 10-year plan, maybe a 15-year plan, because there's a lot of sewer line in town. But it's one we will definitely come back with and certainly present it to you what our plan is. The pumping station, it is something we would like to move on quickly. As you know, the USDA process, MDA process takes a while, so if we start now,
3 years.
a year, 2 years from now, we will have it.
and we'll have some of our infrastructure
close
fixed.
to being
but,
started.
Yeah.
Sure. So second
Close
piece of
to
it,
being approved.
I won't say that we have reserve capacity in our solar, but we have capacity that we're paying for as opposed to benefiting from. Does this put us in a better position to draw from that electricity we're creating?
I believe the pump station is already on the solar.
It already is, okay, and
Is that correct, Mr. Mayor? It is.
Yes.
Yes, that should
So-
have been on the
Yes.
first phase.
the assumption is something might even be more efficient.
Right.
Okay,
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, our
Trade-off.
pumps, and we had looked at getting a smart energy grant for just the pumps.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't qualify for it, but your newer pumps are gonna be more energy efficient
Right.
as well, as opposed to our older ones.
so more electric cars for staff. Okay, but besides that, The other side then, board, I'll ask you, does anybody have an issue authorizing staff to proceed and move forward?
The solicitation is like Ms.
Like-
Willetts presented the flow chart?
Correct.
No, I
Okay.
think that's.
All right,
that's what we
so
do.
can we move to a motion then to direct staff to pursue this?
Yes, please.
Okay, so,
I make a motion for staff to pursue the funding for the
okay,
pump station.
I could ask you to revise with the language.
Where?
To proceed
That's it,
with
doesn't-
solicitation of
says-
federal
yeah,
funding.
okay. Go ahead and proceed with the solicitation for the federal funding for new pumping station for the town.
Terrific. Okay, is there a second for the motion?
I'll second the motion.
The motion's been made by Commissioner Sweeney. It's been seconded by Commissioner Blanchard. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against? The motion carries 5-0. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much. Okay, so we now move forward to setting an agenda for our next town meeting.
That's an alarm related to one of our systems.
I was kind of wondering, yeah, sure,
Yes.
for sure.
I'm sorry?
So, agenda items for our next meeting.
Okay. I have 7 items. Can, where's the wording for the public
Only
hearing?
go
There it is.
respond.
Okay. I have the
Yeah.
swearing in of the new commissioners is agenda item number 1.
It's a mystery.
I have agenda item number 2 is the mayor's recommendation for reorganization of the Board of Commissioners. Number 3 will be public hearing on the zoning map amendment request to rezone 10, 11, 5, and the western half of Lot 12, as shown on the revised plan of Emmett Gardens. Do you want it all? From low-density residential R1 to neighborhood commercial B1. And we will advertise as appropriate.
Terrific, okay.
Oh, a correction on that, it's lots 10, 11, and 15, not 5. That's okay.
And the eastern half or western half of 12 or something?
Western half of Lot 12.
Okay.
Really? I have to cut some. All right, following that, without going through it all, it'll be consideration, once you have your public hearing, then you can consider the item. So then it'll be consideration to rezone lots 10, 11, 15, and the western half of Lot 12, as shown on the revised plan of Emmett Gardens, from low-density R1 to neighborhood commercial B1.
Okay,
1, 2,
so that's 4.
where am I at? 1, 2, 3, 4. I gotta cut something. I'm cutting your MS4 update. Okay, I'll bring that back in November. I'm cutting something because that'll be just a little bit much. Number 3, for discussion and consideration.
This is
Number 5.
5, sorry.
That's okay.
I have it in my notes different. For discussion and consideration, request by Indian Lookout for sole use of Scott Road Farm for hunting.
Did you say soul use?
Sole, S-O,
Singular,
I got you.
solo,
So you will.
spiritual too, but,
Okay.
okay.
charter amendments for consideration. That'd be number 6.
Which is what?
Charter amendments related to,
Our charter, our town charter.
okay, but related to what topic? Do we know?
It's various topics throughout the town charter,
Okay.
to clarify, I forgot how I worded it last
For
time.
clarification.
Charter amendments to clarify,
Arcane language.
there you go.
Okay. For clarification of
language.
Mr. Rich, well done. Okay. All right, that's number 6.
And then finally, ethics complaint procedures for consideration as proposed by the Ethics Commission. Bring yours back in November. I mean, it's only
Need that be put on administrative, but
3.
Well, that's a good question.
Three of them are very short. Your swearing in, your reorganization, your charter amendment are short.
Okay.
If there's something else that you would like me to remove,
can you put them 3 first? That way it'll be right out of our way, and then we get ready to the other stuff,
I think we do, swearing in, reorganization of board,
with the charter.
and then
the charter amendments.
the archaic language issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we move to the public hearing and consideration afterwards, assuming we can get to that. That would be great. And then the last item would be Indian Lookout Conservation Club item for consideration or for discussion?
I put for discussion
Discussion,
and
okay.
possible consideration.
Fair enough.
Okay,
Okay.
is that all right?
I think that's reasonable. Yes, that's all right. Okay, so moving forward. Anybody on the board have anything they want to add or see modified or enhanced or changed or deleted?
No, I just have a comment. I just want to thank Mr. and Mrs. Baldacchino for coming and for sticking through the whole meeting. So they'll be here again next month. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. All right, anybody else? Okay, any administrative business items?
No.
None. Okay. All right, with these things in mind, is there a motion from the board to accept the agenda for the October 1st, 2018 meeting as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda for the October 1st, 2018 meeting as presented.
Very good. Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, the motion's been made by Commissioner Ritz. It's been seconded by Commissioner Buckman. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay. Any final comments for the meeting this evening? None? Okay. All right, there is an election coming up, and we hope people do turn out. And I think that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much. Good night.